Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zeng here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Rank, where I climb the online VGC 16 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. In the last episode, we featured Wolfe winning regionals team, and I'll probably be using that for the upcoming week or so. It's a really fun episode, so if you have not seen that, definitely check it out, but we are just going to jump onto the ladder and see what we can find in today's episode. Of course, the new battle spot season just started, so our rating currently is in just under the 1600s, so we'll see if we can hit that today, and we're just going to continue to climb up. And if you haven't checked out Wolfe's channel and all his videos already, definitely check him out. An incredible guy, one of my best friends, and making awesome videos already, so that'll be in the description below. But we're going to get started with today's episode against a pretty cool team here. And as always, if you enjoy Road to Rank, please share your support by leaving a like on the video. I would really appreciate it. My opponent here is rocking a team of Crobat, Gengar, Kyogre, Zapdos, Aegislash, and Rayquaza. So, pretty threatening team in general. You know, RayOgre, very popular combination. And I think this kind of team actually performs pretty well against it because of the Dialga. Dialga, I think, is just super solid in general because of its ability to kind of wall both the Kyogre and the Dialga, or the Rayquaza on my opponent's end. So, I do like the Dialga Trick Room option a lot here. Ferrothorn can be really solid if I eliminate Rayquaza, so that's definitely something I want to keep in mind. I do like Thundurus here because I can Taunt and Thunder Wave. But at the same time, I kind of want to just go with Landorus Dialga to go for an Explosion turn 1, and then like maybe a Trick Room. So Landorus Dialga, Salamence could be worth bringing, definitely want Kyogre here. And my opponent looks like he has the Tailwind option, obviously, with both Zapdos and, more importantly, Crobat. So then the question is, do I want Ferrothorn or Salamence as my last one? I think Ferrothorn's really good here. One of the reasons why Wolfe was able to dominate Florida Regionals with this team is because so many people just didn't know how to deal with Ferrothorn. And so Wolfe would, you know, knock out the Pokemon that check the Ferrothorn and then bring out Ferrothorn and just win the game. And I've actually used Ferrothorn at the World Championships the last 2 years. I think it's a really solid Pokemon, and I'm excited to, try it out in VGC 2016 with Wolfe's team. So, I'm gonna lead with the popular lead of Landorus and Dialga against Rayquaza and Zapdos, which I think is pretty solid since I get an Intimidate off and I can actually just Trick Room immediately. So, can't complain too much here. I'm probably gonna just go for the Explosion, I think. We do note that he should be max speed, given that he went before with the airlock. Though I think Zapdos' pressure went off first, so could that be Choice Scarfed? Maybe it's just really speedy as well. Regardless, I'm going to go for the Explosion, and I'm going to Trick Room here. This just allows me to get a free switch into Kyogre and then start kind of sweeping with Water Spout. He could, of course, have Aegislash in the back, which is, one Pokemon that could be a little bit problematic, but I'm not too worried about that. Once again, if I eliminate Rayquaza, then Ferrothorn actually can just seal up the game if the Zapdos doesn't carry something like Heat Wave. Even if it does, Kyogre with Water type, or setting up the rain will be really helpful. So, I don't want to go for the Rock side mainly because I would rather just, even if he goes for the Double Protect, that's still actually not the worst of scenarios because then I just get in the Kyogre for free. I think the best play my opponent could make here is maybe switch out into Aegislash and go for something, but Rayquaza actually does end up going for the Protect, which is a good move on my opponent's end. Let's see if Zapdos does so as well. Nope. So I do just get the Explosion off, and yes, Telepathy Dialga is allowed in VGC, so as you see here, we'll be able to resist that with the Telepathy, so it's a really nice strategy. Also blocks some Earthquake, and that's why Choice Band Landorus is so good on this team. Pairs off, the synergy with Dialga is honestly incredible, so we trade knockouts there, but I don't mind that one bit because I got Trick Room up, and this means a free switch into Kyogre, so, honestly, yeah, that worked out pretty nicely for me, I would say. And this team relies on Trick Room, whereas my opponent's team is pretty speedy, so I think I'm definitely in an advantageous position, although he might bring in his own Kyogre, but it's actually going to be Aegislash here, which I'm also okay to see. So given that we've seen Aegislash, given that Rayquaza is out currently, it's most likely that my opponent's last Pokemon is going to be that Kyogre. If that's the case, this next turn I think I'm going to want to double up into the Rayquaza slot, and I'm just going to want to pick up a knockout if possible. He might switch out. Aegislash also might be tempted to Wide Guard here. So I could Water Spout, could take that risk. I'm definitely launching a Dragon Pulse into Rayquaza. He is intimidated though. So I feel like I still actually like the Water Spout play here, because if he doesn't Wide Guard, then I just get it off. I don't know how fast his Aegislash is, but chances are Kyogre is going to outspeed it here. But let's say, one fear is that Rayquaza has the Focus Sash. But if it does have the Focus Sash, then since it's intimidated, Dragon Ascent won't do nearly as much to Kyogre. and if he doesn't go for the wide guard, then I'll just be able to pick up a knockout before it does anything. So I think it's most likely possible that Rayquaza switches out here, could Mega Evolve as well and just go for an attack. But it looks like it is going to pull out the switch out, so good move on my opponent's end there, making this a little bit trickier. Kyogre's going to come in. Now the question is, does his Aegis/Protect or King Shield or Wide Guard? Because if it does either of those, then I'll just be able to get a lot of damage off immediately, which is really nice. Of course, now that Rayquaza switches out, Airlock is no longer in effect. Looks like he's actually going for the attack, and since he's faster, he's going to get knocked out here. So we're just going to see a Shadow Ball come out, but that's not good news for my opponent. Going to target down Kyogre, but Kyogre's really bulky here, and I'm just going to be able to get a full power Dragon Pulse and Water Spout off here without any risk, honestly. You see that Dialga's damage output isn't exactly incredible, and Primal Kyogre is also super bulky, so the Dragon Pulse and Water Spout, however, still works out really nicely there as I pick up the knockout and Aegislash goes down. And that's only one turn and Trick Room gone. I mean, it's only been a 2-turn game so far, and I think my opponent just didn't prepare for Trick Room very well in general. Of course, the game's still not over yet, though, so, never want to cut your opponent out. But looking pretty good right now, especially with Ferrothorn in the back, and 3 turns of Trick Room left. So with that, I'm actually going to protect my Kyogre here in case he has Thunder and Dragon Pulse. Of course, because Rayquaza's out, even if he does have Thunder, it's going to mean that he's forced to Thunder in, non-rain, basically. So it looks like he's actually going to just choose to go for the Primal Evolution, or excuse me, the Mega Evolution here, the Rayquaza. So, yeah, he did have Airlock above earlier, so that's why Kyogre's Rain was already negated at that point, but Delta Stream here also cancels out the Rain. Could potentially be going for that to hope that, Ice Beam's damage output is reduced. But I know Dialga's really bulky, as he actually goes for the Extreme Speed onto Dialga. Interesting move there. Maybe just trying to get some damage off, or maybe my opponent realizes at this point, hey, there's not much I can do to win the game, but that's a kind of interesting decision there. Dragon Pulse does not pick up the knockout. He actually goes for the Scald, so good read there, predicting the potential Protect there, but not going to be too good here since he doesn't get a burn. So with that, this next turn I can just go for another Water Spell and just Dragon Pulse. And the Protect on Kyogre was my safest play. I knew that unless he had a Earth Power on Rayquaza, which is pretty rare for the most part, he didn't have a great way to touch Dialga. Even Draco Meteor and Overheat or Fire Blast don't do too much damage to it, and Kyogre can Ice Beam. But Wolfe's Dialga does carry Citrus Berry, so with that I know I could easily survive a combination of attacks. Instead, I was hoping, hey, if you Protect with your Rayquaza, then the next turn I can just double up for the safe knockout. At this point, I don't know what item it has, but my best bet is Focus Sash. Typically on Rayquaza you see Sash, Life Orb, or Choice Band. So he is going to make the safe Protect play here, but because he attacked last turn and I got all that damage off, I can just make the safe play of getting as much free damage off against the Kyogre here. And I still have Trick Room up, so this next turn I can just, Dragon Pulse Water Spout once again. But actually, kind of interesting to note, his Kyogre is outspeeds mine right now under Trick Room. So he might be slower, which is not something I anticipated. But, a lot of the primals on these Trick Room teams don't actually run minimum speed. Like the primals I used on the team I used to win regionals that was built by Pokealex actually invests a fair amount in speed to take advantage of Tailwind as well. So now I'm just going to Ice Beam and Dragon Pulse, and there's really not much my opponent can do. Maybe hope for a double Protect, but I think at this point there's really no way my opponent could win this one, even with the double Protect, unless you had like Earthquake on Rayquaza and got like a double crit. But basically I need to knock out Rayquaza here, but instead he's going to go for Extreme Speed. Yeah, it's not going to be able to do very much to Kyogre, so I'm just going to be able to pick up the knockout, and then this next turn the game will be over. So a pretty straightforward game here. Ended up getting dragged out a little bit longer, but basically relatively straightforward. I was able to get the Trick Room up immediately, able to eliminate Zapdos, which is one of the more annoying threats to Kyogre, which was really helpful. Those bulky electric types like Zapdos and Thundurus can always be a little bit annoying to deal with, but, as long as you have a couple of reliable answers, and this team certainly does, then you can deal with it. Like I said, I was tempted to bring the Thundurus in this matchup, and the Salamence, honestly, but I'm very content with the 4 Pokemon I ended up bringing. I didn't even need the Ferrothorn, but this whole game I was playing, setting myself up for the Ferrothorn sweep in the end, and my opponent was smart in conserving the Rayquaza since it most likely carried a Fire-type attack. Typically it's like Extreme Speed, Protect, Dragon Ascent, and Overheat, Fire Blast, Flamethrower. Now, of course, sometimes you do see Draco Meteor, sometimes you see Swords Dance, sometimes you see Waterfall. So Rayquaza is a Pokemon that you actually have to be careful and basically assume it has all the threatening attacks that it can carry. Especially on that kind of team. He didn't have any other Pokemon that could have a fire type attack, so I guess Zapdos with Heat Wave, but fire type attack on Rayquaza would have made a lot of sense there, and he was pretty Ferrothorn weak to begin with. So do pick up a nice win there. We'll see what we can find in the next game. But so far this team is a lot of fun, and you know, hopefully I do Wolfe a little bit of justice with it, because, you know, he built a really fantastic team, and I think it certainly fits his playstyle, but I really like it as well. I think it's always interesting trying out top teams from other players. So we're going to find our second opponent from Canada with a rating of 1638, so win here probably puts us into the 1600s, and here we do see yet another RayOgre team, but this time, actually very similar team compositions here. We have 4 of the 6 same Pokemon. He's got Rayquaza, Kyogre, Gengar, Ferrothorn, Landorus, and Thundurus, so this looks pretty familiar to the last one. Except, you know, Ferrothorn on his end replaces Aegislash, Thundurus on his end replaces Zapdos. My last opponent did have Gengar, Rayquaza, and Kyogre, but he's got the Landorus too, which makes things a little bit trickier. So I do like my opponent's team a lot here, and that's definitely pretty scary. So let's see here. What do I want to go with? We have such similar Pokemon. Salamence could be really good with Hyper Voice, and I think Let Salamence might be the call here. I actually like Salamence Thundurus here because I can Thunder Wave and taunt his Thundurus, and that way my Salamence will be able to just maybe get a substitute up. And for the last two, I don't know, Landorus is kind of tempting for explosions here, but he's got Intimidate, which severely weakens me. I definitely need Dialga for the Flamethrower against Ferrothorn, should he bring it, and I think Kyogre as the last one still makes the most sense. So I'm going to go with these 4. I'm going to keep Ferrothorn on the bench this time, despite my opponent having kind of a similar team, because this time I want to rely on Salamence more. In the last game, you know, my opponent had Zapdos, which is a little bit more annoying to deal with when, typically because it's a little bit bulkier. Thundurus is here though, because I have max speed with Wolfe's Thundurus. I can actually outspeed and taunt, so that prevents a Thunder Wave, and Thunder Wave is one of the best solutions to Mega Salamence. So if I can prevent the Thunder Wave, that'll instantly stop it. And of course, I can spread paralysis with my own Thunder Wave. So got a bunch of options right from the get-go. But let's see how this game plays. So I am going with a pretty different team composition from the last one, despite my opponent's team being somewhat similar. So here's the Salamence and Thundurus. We're going to see Kyogre and Landorus, which I'm actually okay with here, as he uses Shiny Kyogre. I do think the hack check on Battle Spot needs to be a little bit better, because that is not allowed, but we'll see how this goes. So, Intimidate coming off on both ends here. Of course, I am faster with Salamence, so confirming is not Choice Scarf Landorus. Not like you really see much of those, you know, in this format. So, there are already some interesting mind games here. You know, you have to ask, does Kyogre protect this turn, fearing a Thunderbolt? Or does he just go for an attack like an Ice Beam? Because one play my opponent can make is protect Rock Slide. I could actually switch out into my own Kyogre too, which would be kind of a cool play. Kind of actually tempted to do that. Could substitute, but if he Rock Slide Ice Beams, then, you know, don't gain much mileage from that. I don't know. If I were my opponent, I would probably protect Kyogre or switch it out. But I'm going to go for the Protect Thunderbolt play. I like that the most, though. Okay, so he stays in with both. So now the question is, does he protect Kyogre? Maybe I should have just attacked with Salamence. We'll see. Okay, so Salamence goes for the Protect. What does Landorus and Kyogre go for? Yeah, he does Protect. So good move there. I could have just Hyper Voice, but didn't want to risk it. I'm fine with that. He's probably going to go for a Rock Slide here. Yeah. So he's intimidated, but this Thundurus is very offensive, as you can see by the HP stat, but still going to be able to take that with over 50%, which is quite nice. That is trickier, though. That's why I wanted to Hyper Voice last turn, because I knew then I could thread in Landorus in a knockout the following turn. I could Thunderbolt Kyogre, or I could Thunder Wave it, which would be interesting. But I think I'm going to just go for the Thunderbolt. I'm going to actually switch out into my own Kyogre and Thunderbolt it for some good damage. You could switch out with his Kyogre as well, but that's fine. I don't lose much momentum. But yeah, that first turn definitely was a little bit frustrating since I could have gone for the Hyper Voice, but that definitely wasn't worth the risk. I didn't think it was worth taking. And I could have made a really hard read there, but in best of one on Battle Spot, typically Now people are like, oh, you play so safely. I mean, in tournaments, you know, that's not always the case, but it's Battle Spot. And he actually does withdraw the Kyogre, so good move there. Maybe Ferrothorn coming in? Yeah, it is going to be Ferrothorn. So great plays by my opponent so far. But once again, I still don't mind this too much since Salamence is, of course, intimidated. So going to get a Thunderbolt. Doing okay damage. Actually paralyzing it, which hurts me more than it helps me. He's just going to launch another Rock Slide here, but that's not going to do too much. I wonder if he's going to explode here with his Landers. That'd be interesting. But given that we've seen the Ferrothorn, that confirms that his last one should be Rayquaza, so Dialga's going to be super important here. This next turn, I'm just going to go for the Water Spout. Could taunt Ferrothorn. But instead I'm going to Protect, since Thundurus is actually really good against both Kyogre and Rayquaza. And most likely his Landers here does not have Protect. Most Landerses in VGC don't have Protect in general. Really only saw Protect in 2013, occasionally in 2015. He actually goes for the U-turn, but unfortunately targeting down Thundurus, so maybe not expecting the Protect. Instead I actually just pick up a knockout here, which is excellent. That does so much damage to Ferrothorn too. Is that even a crit? Yeah, it is. So, double crit there, doesn't matter on the Landers obviously, but RNG's been pretty fortunate the last couple of turns. He actually does go for the Leech Seed. I was kind of tempted to taunt there, but I'm okay with him getting the Leech Seed off because, more importantly, I just knocked out the Landers and Thundurus still hangs around, so perfectly okay with how that played out. I think it's definitely in my favor right now. Ferrothorn's obviously a little bit obnoxious to deal with, but I do have Salamence with Double Edge and Dialga with Flamethrower to deal with it, which is why I brought both of those Pokemon in this matchup. And because he didn't go for the Power Whip, maybe expecting a switch out, or just wanting to get recovery going, Kyogre ends up not taking any damage. So that ends up being a pretty perfect turn there. Only thing that could have been better is if he missed the Leech Seed, but can't complain there at all. So he's going to bring in his Kyogre. Let's see. So with his Kyogre out, I think it's a good time to switch out into Dialga and just go straight for a Thunderbolt into Kyogre to try to get some damage off. You know, if he protects then Gyro Ball or Leech Seeds Thundurus, I'm actually 100% okay with that because that means I get the free switch in into whatever I want. And I would probably choose Kyogre there because then I get Kyogre and Dialga out and then, you know, looking pretty threatening. Or I could bring Mence out actually, so either works out fine. But I don't want the Ferrothorn to get too much recovery up. I don't want it to, you know, just continue Leech Seeding. And getting recovery from my Kyogre, which is why I'm going to pull the switch out. He is going to make the safe play of protecting with Kyogre, but like I said, I'm okay with that. He's probably going to Gyro Ball the Ferrothorn. Actually, looks like he was going for the Protect there. So, yeah, I'm okay with that. Like, that actually works out even better for me since, no, I guess this is kind of interesting because now I kind of want to taunt the Ferrothorn. I can't just Flamethrower, unfortunately, because Rain is still up on his end. But I also want the damage output against Kyogre. Could Protect. I actually like Protect Thunderbolt. Yeah, I like that a lot. So then I get the switch in, because Thundurus will most likely go down here. So not letting him get the Leech Seed off against Dialga this turn. Thunderbolt should do around 50% since this is pretty offensive. Yeah, right around the money. Here's an Origin Pulse coming out. That could actually miss as well. It actually does miss. Does he go for the Leech Seed onto Dialga? Oh, he does, and that's really unfortunate. And that's why Origin Pulse is, you know, pretty shaky move to use in general. But that definitely sucks for my opponent. I do feel pretty bad about that, but, you know, what can you do? So with that, I'm just going to go straight for the Dragon Pulse into Kyogre, and I'm going to taunt the Ferrothorn. Once Ferrothorn is taunted, it's forced to attack. If I knock out Kyogre, then Dialga or Rayquaza comes back in, air locks up, and then I can just Flamethrower it. He's going to go for the safe Protect on Kyogre, but now that Ferrothorn's going to get taunted, he's going to lose a lot of momentum. So he does smartly enough, however, go for the Gyro Ball here, which is the best play. So it's going to knock out Thundurus, but now I just bring in Salamence, and he's kind of screwed. Because what I can do is actually just Double Edge into Kyogre and Flamethrower into Ferrothorn. And unless he gets a double Protect off, that play is basically foolproof here. He could actually switch out into Rayquaza, which would be kind of interesting. If I were him, I might actually go for the double Protect play. I don't want a Hyper Voice here because I fear the missing up the knockout. And I'd rather not risk that. So I'm just going to go for it here. And Rayquaza presumably being my opponent's last one means that Salamence did end up being a very good Pokemon to bring into this matchup. especially considering that my opponent didn't bring the Thunderous, instead bringing the Landers, and one of the biggest plays in this turn was him going for the U-turn onto the Thunderous, hoping to pick up the knockout, but instead walking to the Protect because rather than get a switch into RayOgre, I was able to just pick up the knockout. Paralysis on Ferrothorn ended up not mattering. He's not going to Protect here, so I am going to get the double edge off, and because RayOgre is going to feint here, it's going to eliminate the rain from the field. So another critical hit, I guess adding insult to injury, but none of that really mattering too much in this matchup. And Flamethrower here is going to be able to knock out the Ferrothorn. So, if anything, maybe the critical hit onto Ferrothorn could have hurt my opponent a little bit. Of course, when you get RNG in your favor, even if it doesn't matter, put your opponent on tilt. But it's a pretty free double knockout here, with Rayquaza being my opponent's last one. Pretty much should be game here. So yeah, I know that Wolfe actually, one thing he really wanted to beat with this team was Rayquaza and RayOgre, and this team has a phenomenal matchup against it, as you can see. Both games today have been pretty straightforward, not too much difficulty in either of them, and yeah, I think it's a pretty good demonstration of how strong this team can be. So he's going to Mega Evolve here, no reason not to, but kind of difficult for Rayquaza to pull the comeback. Can't even really beat Dialga one-on-one unless it does have the Earth Power here, so combination of Hyper Voice and Dragon Pulse should be able to seal up the deal. But pretty exciting games today. Kind of interesting to get both games against like the RayOgre combination there, as Hyper Voice almost picks up the knockout. That's 4 critical hits in this game, none of which actually mattered. I've never seen so many useless crits, but here's a Dragon Ascent from the Rayquaza. Gonna pick up the knockout onto Mence there. See if it's Life Orb or not, that'd be interesting. In best of 3, like late game plays like this, when your opponent has no chance of winning, it's actually like really good to get that information. And knowing that Hyper Voice with the crit does around 90%, knowing that Rayquaza has Life Orb and Dragon Ascent picks up the knockout onto Mence, those are all like important things you can know going into a best of 3. But obviously this is a best of 1, so not mattering too much. But good game there, another pretty straightforward one. Didn't need to rely on Trick Room this time, but my lead combination of Thunderous and Salamence worked out really nicely, and basically I played exactly how I wanted it to. So both games today going really well, honestly. Neither of them really turning out too badly. That first one was a little bit scary since my opponent played really well in the opening turns, but the momentum completely shifted when I brought in RayOgre and just got that water spout off. So yeah, it's gonna be it for this episode, guys. A little bit shorter, but as we get into the higher rankings, we'll get matched against higher ranked opponents. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, leave a like if you did, and don't forget to go check out Wolfe and his YouTube channel. Alright, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.